Hey gamers, what's up? Okay, what we have here is a Nintendo. As you can see, it's doing some pretty funky stuff. That's the 72-pin connector. And most of the time, swapping out that connector will fix the system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through it. I'm going to show you how to do it. So let's get started. Now, all you need to do this is a Phillips head screwdriver and a new 72-pin connector. You can pick these connectors up at a lot of places. I mean, if you don't have any place near you that sells one, go ahead and jump on eBay and you can snag one for about $5–10 shipped. So here you go, and then we'll get started. Now I will add that replacing the 72-pin connector does not always fix the problem. I'd say it works about 70% of the time though, so it's always worth trying just to see if you can get your system to work properly. So first thing we're going to do is remove all these screws. So the next thing you're going to want to do is remove this shield, and that's done by removing these screws and these. One good thing to remember is that all the screws in this are the same, so they all fit in whatever order except for two of them. There are two screws that are longer than all the rest, and I'll show you those. I'll point those out later. Now, once the shield is removed, you've got that screw, and then the screws that hold that on. Now, these screws are the ones I was talking about that are longer. In some systems, like in this case, it's actually a silver screw versus one of the brass colored screws. So you just make sure you put these two screws back in their original places. And it's the second screw in, or the one in the middle, as far as the cartridge slot goes, and you can tell. But sometimes they're the same color as those. Okay, and that's all the unscrewing you have to do. Now you just lift the board up, you pop off this tray, and this is your old 72-pin connector. Just gonna pull that right off the board and dispose of it, because you're done with it now. Now what I like to do at this point is I always take a second and I clean these connections, and I'll vacuum out the system, make it nice. I got a lot of dust and crap on there, so it'll be nice to get rid of that, and then we'll get to putting the new 72-pin connector on. Now, just as with anything else, I'm just going to use rubbing alcohol on here and just wipe that off real nice. That screw I dropped earlier. And now I'm just going to use the old shop vac with the brush attachment and get that dust out. Now, this console wasn't nearly as bad as some I've seen. You never know what you're going to find when you open these things up, so be prepared. I mean, you'll find dead bugs, dirt, dust, pennies, all kinds of stuff. Or like in this case, you'll just get lucky. Set it back in there. Now, you've got your new 72-pin connector. This is your bottom half, the part that's sunken in. And you're just going to plug it right onto this board, just like a cartridge. you want these holes to line up. Okay, and once that's on, you need to put this back on. Sometimes it can be a pain. And another thing you need to watch out for when you do this is the bottom part of this has a little lip on it right there, and it has to go over top right there. Otherwise it'll raise it up too high, and when you screw it back together it won't fit properly. So keep an eye out for that when you're putting your system back together. And it all fits right back down. So at this point what I normally do is put the screws into the cartridge tray and test the system out without completely reassembling it. This way I know whether it's worked, and I don't put a bunch of work into putting it all back together just to have to take it back apart, rip out the 72-pin connector because the system doesn't work properly. So let's throw these screws in and then we're going to test it out. I do this because I want the tray to be secure. And now that you have these 4 screws in, you can plug a cartridge into it just as it sits and test it out. Make sure your replacement connector is working properly and that you're going to have good luck with making this system work again. So let's go try it out. Okay, so now we're plugging it in. And there it is. Always try it out a few times just to make sure that it's working properly. So we're good to go. I think let's put it back together. Okay, so now we're just going to throw the screws back in. We'll start with the 2 we didn't put in on the tray. Now when I do this, I do not over torque my screws. I put them in tightly, but I don't bear down on them because I don't want to crack anything or break anything or shift anything. Now remember not to start putting screws in these parts, because when the shield goes back on, that's where they're going to go. You'll know the shield's in place properly because there's these little pins that stick out. Right there, right there. So now you're ready to start putting these screws in. Now at this point, you should only have 6 screws left. If you have more than 6 screws, you have forgotten something. You should really go back and look.